Today I'll be speaking about Chapter 3 from the Diamond Sutra, following on Hoju's talk on Chapter 2 yesterday. And in Chapter 2, there was a question raised. A question from Subhuti. So, as we remember, the Buddha takes his seat after his day of walking, begging, and then takes his seat to speak to the assembly. And Subhuti makes note of how rare this occasion is of the Buddha preaching the Dharma to his followers. And then Subhuti goes on to ask, even so, Bhagavan, which is an honorific for the Buddha, even so, Bhagavan, if a noble son or daughter should set forth on the Bodhisattva path, how should they stand, how should they walk, and how should they control their thoughts? Now, the Buddha had just provided an example of this activity through his morning and early afternoon, say, ritual or normal activity, putting on his robes and walking to town, begging, and then eating his noon meal of rice, washing his feet, and then sitting. The way he did that. But then Subhuti asked these questions. If a son or daughter should set forth in the Bodhisattva path, what's the Bodhisattva path? Bodhisattva path can be defined in varying ways, but more or less it's a desire to attain Buddhahood for the sake of others, or alternately to hold back on attaining Buddhahood until, there's attain it. Something to that effect, but it's definitely for the sake of others, or even to prolong one's life in the worldly existence so that others may cross over. That's the Bodhisattva path. I can speak more of that. And so I assume all the people in the audience, the people attending are on the Bodhisattva path. That's why this question is there, including Subhuti. What should I do? How should I stand? How should I walk? And how should I control my thoughts? And in this case, the Buddha says, I will tell you how those who set forth on the Bodhisattva path should stand, how they should walk, and how they should control their thoughts. And that takes us to Chapter 3. All right, this is Chapter 3. The Buddha said to him, Subhuti, those who would now set forth on the Bodhisattva path should thus give birth to this thought. However many beings there are, in whatever realms of being might exist, whether they are born from an egg or born from a womb, born from the water or born from the air, whether they have form or no form, whether they have perception or no perception, or neither perception nor no perception, in whatever conceivable realm of being one might conceive of beings, in whatever conceivable realm of being one might conceive of beings, in the realm of complete nirvana I shall liberate them all, and though I thus liberate countless beings, not a single being is liberated. This is the path of those in the Bodhisattva path. This is the thought that they should give birth to or arouse. And why not? Why not a single being liberated, Subhuti? A bodhisattva who creates the perception of a being cannot be called a bodhisattva. And why not? Subhuti, no one can be called a bodhisattva who creates a perception of a self, or who creates the perception of a being, a life, or a soul. It's interesting, Buddha says, we're creating the perception of a being or life of a soul or a soul, something outside ourselves, and it's different. Yet, there's this thought that we are to give birth to, that we're to liberate all these types of beings, and the Buddha even enumerates what these types are. Those of what we might say are living beings, different sorts, all kinds, born from an egg, as it says here, all the way from birds to lice or anything born from an egg. Humans, other animals, plants. As Roshi was saying the other day, what this building is made of, the wood and plastic and every other part like that. Those are beings, and we're to liberate them. Every conceivable realm. There's definitely the acknowledgement that we'll use a concept here, conceivable, any type of being we might conceive of. However, the way this is stated is a sort of a statement of infinite beings. So while he gives specific examples of different types of beings, those born from the air, by the way, are, I don't know, some kind of spirits. So all these different kinds of beings that we could conceive of and those we can't conceive of. It seems that these categories, we should be able to picture them all. Actually, you can't. It's infinite. You can't picture them all. So what does that mean to liberate all these beings? You could conceive of or not conceive of. You can imagine. And I'd like you to just take a moment now and actually, not in an intellectual way, but actually can you embody that thought that we're to give birth of? Actually treat that literally. Give birth to or embody that thought. I or you, I am liberating all beings of any kind, including inanimate, any kind of being. I'm liberating all beings now, sitting and speaking, and you're liberating all beings sitting, listening. Because you are on the Bodhisattva path, that's what you do. I find I cannot separate self and other when confronted with this concept that would be, it's that infinity, boundless variety, and boundless number. There's nothing to do but to let go of the attempt to categorize and define. Got to let it go. And as a bodhisattva or an aspiring bodhisattva is to think non-differentiatedly without bias toward all beings. That sort of equality, the quality of all beings. And speaking for myself, there is no self when I embody, absorb, and become that idea. I shall liberate them all. It indicates a kind of even-handedness. And this is expounding on what the Buddha did earlier in his activity. He goes around house to house and begs at each house, rich and poor. He's practical. He goes at a certain time of day when he knows everyone will be cooking and there'll be something in the house. the poor have a chance to practice generosity, and the rich can be embarrassed and give something to them. He says that. And but it's even-handedness, and just takes without looking at what the food even is. It accepts the food, whatever it might be. It takes it back and eats whatever the food is. And neither going around saying, look, I'm the Buddha, I'm something different or special. Just goes around begging and takes it, and it's sort of teaching at the same time. And what is it about a bodhisattva who creates the perception of a being cannot be called a bodhisattva? Didn't Buddha just say, give birth to this thought of liberating all these types of beings, the ones we can conceive of, all we might conceive of, I shall liberate them all, yet not a single being is liberated. Because to say we're liberating a being means we're saying that we're doing something and the being is being liberated, some entity that's separate from ourselves. And we're already getting into a realm of judgment. Of what we think is right and wrong. What do you think, what is liberation? What is that? Liberation or saving? How do we do it? The Buddha did it by begging, eating, walking, teaching. Could be through kindness. There's 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva vow. Well, there are different versions of it, but one is 6 perfections. Perfection of giving, of moral discipline, patience, effort or diligence, concentration, and wisdom. So these are the virtues or perfections. Bodhisattva's vow. And embodying them in what we do. Thinking of all beings equally. As it says here in Red Pine's commentary. The Buddha summarizes how bodhisattvas stand, walk, and control their thoughts, which they do by giving birth to a thought so completely altruistic it includes neither self nor other. Instead of telling us how to conduct our lives and our practice or how to control our thoughts, the Buddha tells us to give birth to a thought. The Buddha's approach is homeopathic. He uses a thought to put an end to all thoughts. But to effect such a cure, not just any thought will do. Only a thought directed towards the liberation of all beings will work. Thus, the bodhisattvas turn their thoughts into offerings. Continuing, that the bodhisattva path, that is active rather than passive. So the active path is what the Buddha showed earlier through his begging and other actions. He advises bodhisattvas not to wait for thoughts to arise, but to give birth to a thought that puts all other thoughts to flight. A thought like the morning sun that chases the myriad stars from the sky. The language used here suggests that this thought has been gestating, that language of giving birth to a thought, has been gestating within us for many lifetimes, and it is now time to bring it forth to give it life. Thus, this is the most important event of a bodhisattva's career and what makes bodhisattva. And can we do that in every action that we do? Can I think I'm taking this action for all beings, animate and inanimate, in that sense of the infinite? More about this, how we should behave. In the Perfection of Wisdom in 25,000 lines, the longer version, Subhuti asks the same question, and the Buddha answers, toward all beings maintain unbiased thoughts and speak unbiased words. Toward all beings give birth to thoughts and words of kindness instead of anger, compassion instead of harm, joy instead of jealousy, equanimity instead of prejudice, humility instead of arrogance, sincerity instead of deceit, compromise instead of stubbornness, assistance instead of avoidance, liberation instead of obstruction, kinship instead of animosity. Toward all beings. Now, can you conceive of sitting as you're sitting here for all beings, doing zazen for all beings? Where'd the self go when you do that? You do that for all beings. Continue on the point about there are actually no beings, not a single being is liberated. Chen Shuang says, Manjushri once said to the Buddha, "What do you mean when you say not a single being is liberated?" And the Buddha replied, "Our nature is ultimately pure and subject neither to rebirth nor nirvana. Thus there are no beings to be liberated, and there is no nirvana to be attained. It is simply that all beings revert to their own nature." Furthermore, Taching says, the primary method taught by the Buddha to liberate beings is to realize that there is no self. Once there is a self, the other concepts follow. In liberating beings, a bodhisattva should realize that there is no self. Once there's no self, there are no beings. And if there are no beings, then all beings are naturally liberated. And once all beings are liberated, the fruit of Buddhahood is not far off. Another quote from Meng San says, the Buddha is telling Subhuti, if you want to still and control your mind, this is what you must do. You must vow to free all beings without becoming attached to the perception of a being. This is how you should vow to free all beings. To do this, you need to make use of wisdom, not intelligence. Intelligence differentiates, wisdom does not. It makes me think of people trying to look smart, have all the answers all the time. The intelligence. And while intelligence is handy to still and control our mind, to free all beings, that's not what we need. That's not what we need. We need wisdom, non-differentiation, and not perceiving beings. Let the beings be themselves without our concept of what they are. Another quote, the spacious great way is so gloriously clear. What everyone possesses is already perfect, but due to a single divisive thought, 10,000 forms appear before us. So I was thinking about the fact that any activity I could do, I could think of as for liberating all beings. It might be a good way to judge the utility, ethics, and what have you of the act. So, eating with our oryoki bowls, vowing to do it, eating to save beings, okay? Going to the kitchen and getting those crackers, those chips at 9:15. What is this? How is this helping to liberate any beings? Okay, well, maybe this is using intelligence, okay, but still does my sense of wisdom naturally arise? And can I conceive of doing this in honor of all beings, put it that way? With that in mind, as we're sitting here, do our zazen, sit for all beings, to liberate all beings. I hope that isn't an intellectual concept for you, but something I can feel. In a way, it's a letting go. At the same time, feeling as if you're doing something very important. And you're listening for all beings. And soon we'll be walking for all beings, preparing lunch and eating for all beings. Thank you.